Rillito. You might call it a river, this track of sand and scrub that threads through the city, inviting runners, riders, taggers, thermal gliders, trotting coyotes, and a solitary cougar. A pueblo of bats nestles into bridge girders to raise their young in the ways of their ancestors, their sonar touching whatever comes near, their tongues licking bugs out of air. You might call it a river when the monsoon brings a flood that bashes through the stillness that threads through the city, the brown churn hurling dirt and weeds and shopping carts in its flow until it settles down and drops whatever it has carried right there in the spot where the flowing stops. You might call it a river, unless you came to its shores the summer when the mountains raged with wildfire and the forest turned to char. The rains began the healing, but it was slow, and the runoff, threading through crevice, gully, and wash, then gathering in Agua Caliente and Tanque Verde, then running into the stillness that threads through the city, carried particles of blackened wood and root, so fine it made the racing flow shine black as liquid coal. I was there. I saw the river at work then, how even as it might thirst for water, how it might long to break the paving that impounds its desire to meander.
This year, Bat Night takes place on September 11th, a date made infamous in our history by sudden, tragic loss. As we gather to explore another kind of loss, one that has taken place slowly over time, we recognize the depth of each and seek to counter destruction with creativity. Bat Night 2010 is about loss of the riparian ecosystem around the Rillito River, and hope for the future. And as I look out on this audience of young people in front of me, I think there is great hope for the future.
The purpose of the Rillito River Project, Bat Night is one project of the Rillito River Project, is to bring together artists and scientists and community in a dry riverbed to call attention to the vanishing rivers of the Southwest and the effect that global climate change is going to have on these rivers.
Well, we're constructing a large sand circle for Bat Night. It's going to be for children and families to play in and build their dreams of the future for the Rillito River and Tucson area. And we're focusing on the species that lived in this region of the river before man populated it. And now, because of water level drops, they no longer can survive here.
This is a toast to the animals and the plants that once lived in the riparian habitat by the Rillito River. The Fremont cottonwood, the giant spotted whiptail lizard, the hilo-top minnow, the Huachuca water umble, the lowland leopard frog, Miriam's mesquite mouse, northern Mexican garter snake, and the western yellow-billed cuckoo. To the soul of the river that once supported them, I raise my glass to the disappeared.
Well, I think as soon as you draw a circle on the ground, whether you do it with a stick in the dirt or whether you do it as happened that night with 1,000 sandbags shaped in a circle, you turn an open space into a place. And it suddenly has meaning and it calls your attention in a different way. That circle was made by architecture students And we've had a lot of students involved in this project. It's a great way to get them engaged and to be thinking about how art can bring people together to help pay attention to a place in a new way. Then I was thrilled to see how immediately the children took to it, and with their little buckets and shovels, they just immediately set to work. And they didn't care that the sand didn't stick together the way it would in the beach. They just had a blast shaping the dirt with their hands and their buckets.
We would make these special people who looked different than everybody else, and I think they did, and their job was to be play leaders. They had a bag with them, and in their bag they had various things like cookie cutters and molds and magic rocks and spray guns and things to help facilitate play. And I knew that if we would give these urban children an opportunity to put their hands in the earth, that this would go into their consciousness directly. There wouldn't be any barrier, there wouldn't be any words. It would go directly. They would never forget that experience.
Thank you, everybody. We have so many things to be thankful for. One of them is that these fine Mexican bats have chosen our bridges to make their home. I think it's a gas, and we're glad to have some visitors here from Mexico that fly up in the air every night for us.
Well, the Bat Night phenomenon has been a great surprise to everybody. Who knew that so many thousands of people in Tucson would come out to sit in a dry riverbed in the heat and wait for bats to emerge from under the Campbell Avenue bridge. It's really become a spectacle and a time of joy and a time of play. But what's really fun about it is that the Rillito River Project has made art be one of the things that brings people together to see what's going on down there.
A little about bats. They used to get a lot of bad rep. If you think about witches stirring their cauldron, there's always bats flying around, images of the devil, bats flying around, creatures of the dark, mysterious, deadly, vampires, and the whole bit. But with this many people showing up for Bat Night, it's the whole image is changing. There's an interest in it, and rightly so. A little background about bats. There's about 1,000 species of bats worldwide. That's about 1/4 of all the species of mammals in the world. So that's pretty impressive. Here in Arizona, we have about 45 species of bats. In the United States, there's about 45 species of bats, and in Arizona, we have 28 species of bats. So we're well endowed with bats. Bats are mammals, just like we are. So they have fur, they produce milk, live young, and are warm-blooded, just like we. And they're the only mammal that can truly fly. So it's interesting in that. The things like the flying squirrel are actually gliders. And bats are unique because in their wing, if you look at your upper arm and forearm, that forms part of the wing. And then they have a claw here at the corner, and that's their thumb. And their wing, most of it is made up of the real elongated palm bones and finger bones. So they fly like this, more than what a bird does that flies with a whole arm motion like this. Bats use that as well, but a lot of hand motion. The reason they like these bridges, they're in the expansion joints. When these bridges are built, there's from season to season, there's a tremendous change in temperature, so they have these expansion. So that's a great roosting area for these bats, and that's why they use it. There's other bridges here in town that have them. There's a bat already flying. Anyway, they go after insects, and I estimated that this colony of this bridge alone in one night eat over 600 pounds. A bat can easily eat well over half its weight in insects. If we get a bunch of them flying over us here. Krista has a bat detector that picks up their echolocation and brings it down to our level of hearing, kind of like a Geiger counter. So if we get a number coming across, she'll be recording them and or monitoring them, and we'll let you hear what they sound like. There you go.
How even as the river might be a stranger to itself, lost to the city's velocity and constant subdued roar, how the river will rise to the fact of weather, tell its story of loss and beauty and change. You might call it a river, though it looks nothing like what you imagine a river to be. That flow shining one day black as liquid coal, and on another day becoming again the stillness that threads through the city. This place, where something you might call your life reveals itself to be an eddy in the unseen flow of all that continues.